Daily Detroit is brought to you by your Metro Detroit Edward Jones Financial Advisors. To learn how they can help you reach your financial goals, visit edwardjones.com. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Hello, friends, and welcome to your Daily Detroit. I'm Jer Stays, and it is Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. And as we do once a week, it is always good to talk to Fletcher Sharpe about Detroit City FC and, well, some more sports, too. Fletcher Sharpe, good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me again.
You were missed in Memphis.
Yeah, I planned to be out of town for a weekend that I did not think Detroit City FC would be playing, which hopefully no one boos me on social media or in real life. But they proved me wrong, even though I did pick them to finish, in the playoff spot. They proved me wrong, and unfortunately, they could have proved me a bit more wrong, but that's how sports go sometimes.
Yeah, the 3-1 loss was, if you watched it on TV, I know it's got to be heartbreaking, but to see it in person, to see the chances and the crowd just bit into when some mistakes were made or whatever, all banter aside, the fans of Memphis, those who are passionate about the team, showed up. That place was loud. When I was, sitting there with fans and everything else, they were passionate about their team, and Detroit City just didn't pull it through.
Yeah, that's one thing I will say about Memphis 901 as a whole. Again, removing banter, as you said, because if I did, I'd mention how terrible that field looks on TV. But Memphis 901 did a really great job of integrating themselves into Memphis's culture. They routinely have players from the Memphis Grizzlies, their NBA basketball team, the Memphis Tigers, their college team, and any other professional athlete there come to games, give like the pregame. I guess for baseball, it'd be like the opening pitch, but like they don't really have that in soccer, so they'll come out, wave. I know they recently had Ja Morant, who is a big Memphis star. For those who might not know who he is, they also had Jaren Jackson, the former Michigan State star, come out to a game, and they actually talked to him afterwards, and he's like, I didn't realize that everyone got down like this. This is a really great atmosphere. I'll be sure to show up. Even if they don't have me, just come, which is just a great thing to see, that they've really, really embraced everything there. So yeah, I'm sure that energy from there was probably overwhelming at some parts. It sounded a bit loud. It wasn't like watching, New York Red Bulls 2 play, and it's just, you can hear people drop empty soda cans. Like I'm sure there was very passionate energy around there.
What do you think happened with that match? I mean, the first half, it seemed like Memphis had a lot of possession, but, weren't able to score. Nate did a ton of work, and it's just my personal opinion being, right there in person, and Nate started to look tired during that second half.
Defense let them down. All three goals were just critical errors, just critical errors. The second goal in particular, a foul happened, ball got kicked into the box, and just no one marked anybody. Just let Graham Smith get in there and just nod the ball past Nate. And not necessarily his fault all the way, although he did move kind of slow. You could see Stephen Carroll look at him like, bro, what are you doing? Why aren't you over here? And just exasperation happened. The last goal was the one that I'm not a fan of the team particularly. I like watching the sport, everything like that. I really care about the sport, but I almost threw my remote out the window. Just a really bad...
In person, the feeling was worse.
Just a really bad position where a turnover almost happened, and they get the ball back, and they promptly force the same turnover, and then the one player I wanted not to score from Memphis, the one player, anyone, they could lose 100-0, but no Philip Goodrum goals. No Philip Goodrum goals. And of course, just like the last game they played in Memphis, it had to be him. And he scores, his little irritant, punchable face. And yeah, it was worse than feeling an itching feeling in the bottom of your foot and realizing that it's fire ants biting you. Just watching him have a nice, happy moment was I was like, this is terrible. I didn't turn the game off because it's journalistic duty to finish it out, but I was like, I don't want to see this anymore. I think I am done watching this sport for quite some time.
I had my head in my hands. It was so frustrating because there were so many times during that match where I'm like, maybe we could pull this one out. So let's look forward. I'll ask you two questions. First question, what did that match tell you about what Detroit City FC needs next year?
Speed. One, they need speed. Currently, the fastest player on their roster is Antoine Hopino, who is not very fast. He's quick for someone of
super talented.
Quick for someone of his age, can get up and down quicker than someone you'd expect for his age, but you should not have to add that caveat at the end for his age to talk about someone with speed. I was watching Pittsburgh play against Louisville, and there's a player, Dixon, for Pittsburgh. He's of the same age as Hopino. But when he took off with the ball, like, I thought the game was being played in fast forward. Like, I was stunned at how quickly he weaved in between people before passing. And I was like, Detroit needs one player like that. One player who gets the ball and you're just like, okay. We call them pace burners, where they just you play FIFA and you just keep mashing the speed button over and over and over. That usually one guy he's outside, just runs. Adama Traore for Wolverhampton Wolves and the Spanish national team, perfect example of he gets the ball and no tricks, no nothing. He's just going to run right by you, and you need to catch up. One of my favorite videos I've ever seen on the internet was a Spanish commentator commentating on him running with the ball, and he starts making car noises like, and I'm like, you want some guy like that, where it's like, okay, like this guy is just going to go straight line, full sprint, 100-meter dash with the ball at his feet, and you just got to catch him. And Detroit has no one on their roster who can do that and like actually pull away from people. They have people who will try to do it, and they'll get caught more often than not.
Watching them on the field, that was one of the things that frustrated me. It felt like we were always playing catch up. It felt like we were always chasing. We were never really that often able to kind of take the control for ourselves.
I mean, even the goal they scored with Yazid, which people were like, it's a mistake. The touch he took off his knee was like a perfect touch to like throw the defense off and then his toe poke home. Even that goal kind of came out of like, oh, it happened. Like we had no position where like they just took off and said, we're going to take the ball to you. We're going to go at you. We're going to put you on the back foot. And even if they are playing the game that Trevor likes to play, where like they play more defensively, having someone who has like just flat out speed like that will put at least the defense on the back foot a little bit, because they have to be worried like this guy could run right by me. So we have to kind of make sure that either we press up on him so he's offside, or take a step back so we have some room to cover. But Detroit has no one on their roster currently, that at least I've seen, who takes a running start and people are like, oh God, they're like, okay, I'll just take 2 steps back. And now what?
You mentioned speed. Let's talk about what this season tells you that we need. This has been our first season of the USL Championship. I think considering everything, I mean, absolutely everything. Excellent performance for a first year in a league like this, especially with the cards that we've been dealt. What other things do we need?
More depth. Getting people to come in on loan could be helpful, but it's also more like last resort, unless you're bringing this guy on loan to like start. Like, I know Oakland brought in Carlson from Venezia, and they brought him into like, yo, you're going to come here, you're going to score goals. You're going to play every game that you can play, you're going to score goals. But bringing in someone on loan to just be like, hey, can you be our 4th or 5th center back in case it's bad. That's not good. And we ended up having to use our on loan players way more than I probably should have, because we had injuries. So some depth would be great, so that we don't have to rely on players from other teams who do care about our roster. I'm not going to say that they don't, but like, you kind of want the guy who's signed to your contract as opposed to the guy who's signed to someone else's contract that you're just taking care of.
Unless you're talking about like a European import, right? Somebody that wants to get some minutes in, and you just get a great player for a year. Like whatever magic the Oakland Roots have with Venezia, like great for them, and we need that kind of magic.
I mean, that's why I said like, you want to bring in some depth. Like, if you're bringing a guy on loan who's going to come in and be like the man, the guy who's going to be your guy, fine. That's totally okay. But if you're bringing in a guy on loan to be like, all right, well, you're here and you're just going to sit till we need you, like, that's not the type of loan you want to bring in unless you have some depth between that guy and the field.
I feel like this offseason is going to be a large, or has to be a large turning point for the Detroit City organization. If they don't spend, they're not going to be competitive next year. Like, this is a magical season in a lot of ways. They're going to need to step up in some major ways, and whatever ownership group and however things are structured, I learned firsthand that the USL is no joke when it comes to making those things go, and just being out there and talking to folks and getting kind of the vibe of everything. I just feel like this is a transformative year. Like, one thing I noticed, it's super simple, but like, there was a sponsorship sold for the last call. Right? We don't do that at Detroit City. Like, everything had a sponsorship over there. And those are the kind of things I think, in order to be competitive in this league, you're going to have to do to get, and I think we'll talk about this in a minute, the kind of players that we're going to need going forward.
I mean, heck, I was watching the Tampa Bay Memphis game, and every time Memphis had a corner kick, it's like, it's the Celtic cross corner. And it's like, this is getting really tacky, but by the fifth one, I'm like, the Celtic cross corner kick. If you want to try to manufacture money in certain places, you have to sometimes sell out like corner kicks or foul, or this is the bell tire yellow card. Something just so it's like, all right, you get your name here. We're going to do this here. Boom. Here's some money. There you go. It seems tacky and silly and like whatever, but it's how certain teams can afford to like get players to come in and afford to pay for stuff that they didn't have before. And again, as I mentioned, Detroit had some issues earlier on with sponsorship. So we knew going into the season, they're going to have a lower roster. They had the smallest roster of the entire league. Of all the teams in the league, they had the roster who played the most consistent players out of anybody. And that's because of attrition. They just didn't have enough people. Consistency is good, but it's also bad when like your players could use a rest. You could have had a backup goalkeeper or a backup forward or backup somebody play against Loudoun, but you couldn't afford to because you didn't really have the backups. Like it's one thing if, perfect example, Nate wasn't able to go to the game against Colorado Springs. It would be great to say, let's put out our backup who's played in like 5 or 6, 7 games this season, as opposed to, oh crap, here's our backup who's never played a professional game ever. That's terrifying. That's an awful feeling to have. Like with Tampa Bay Rowdies, currently in the conference finals. Yes, they lost CJ Conker due to an injury. Terrible injury. Happened at Keyworth. Hope he's recovering soon. But Phil Breno, who they brought in, didn't play that many games this season, but he'd played at least 3 or 4. Like, he'd played in a few games. He'd come from Ford Madison and played some games there. So, like, he had some pro experience. He's able to get in the game and play some games, albeit maybe not the most important ones, but able to do something. So when it came time to make important plays, like the last game they played where he made a big penalty kick save, he's got the game repetition. It's not like I'm here, I'm taking warm-ups before every game, but I know I'm not going to play in this game.
Well, and the reason I raised some of this is that this was truly a magical class in 2022 of people who love the team, connected to the team, you know, making their way up. I am very skeptical going forward that they're going to be able to keep everybody if they don't raise the payroll, because there's going to be some of these players that other teams, most of this team is not re-signed for next year. There are going to be other teams looking for some of our players, other opportunities, and we're going to have to be able to compete with them. And I know that that hurts for a section of the fan base, but you're in the pros now.
I can say this. I know some people are worried about a few names. Unless someone's offering Nate Steinwasser like a $600,000 contract, he's not leaving the state of Michigan. I can assure you that if he can't travel for an important game because of work duties and such, he's not going to just be like, oh, I'll go play in Memphis. I'll go play in Colorado. That's not going to work. That's because it's about finding a job. He's an accountant. We all talk about, oh, he's up there doing... Literally, he has a day job that like requires him to like actually have to really plug in there. So he's a name that you don't really have to worry about unless someone's like, hey, Orange County's like $800,000. Yeah, worry then. You should worry.
He's a little small, but an MLS squad.
Yeah, you should worry then. But also, if someone brings up that much money, immediately, okay, bye, goodbye. Thank you for the years. Appreciate you. Please leave. Please go. And you know, you might have to cry about it, but now let's use this money to now buy some more players. It's the weird part of sports that not many Detroit City FC fans had to really experience. They only lost players when they moved up. When they moved up from one league to another, it's like, all right, players who might not be able to play here. I know Dave Edwardson was a big fan favorite when they were in the MPSL. They moved to NISA, and I'm like, love the guy. Prototypical captain. Very much not the fastest, not the strongest. Technique could be good, bad some other days, but he tries hard, and everyone listens when he talks. But he cannot be your captain going into the next year. And lo and behold, Dave's like, all right, I'm going to play for Carpathia, the MPSL. I'm done. Stephen Carroll stepped up, got the armband. Moved up to this level. I'm like, they have some players who cannot be on the roster. They've lost players there. But they've been in between seasons in the same season. It's not been like, oh, Maxi might leave us. It's like, no, we're in NISA. Maxi's not going anywhere because why would he go anywhere else in NISA? That makes literally zero sense. Now you're at a position where it's like, hey, maybe San Antonio saw how well he played this year. And they're like, maybe we bring him back to the hometown kid to come play with us again. Maybe someone witnessed Reese playing well in the wing. They're like, we need a wing back. Why don't we throw him some money? And something that a lot of people kind of focused on that we didn't really think about, I didn't think about in terms of having Detroit finish 6th, is a lot of the points they scored, albeit some were against some of the bigger teams, a lot of the points they scored were against like Loudoun and New York Red Bull and another 2 team. Those teams don't be there anymore. You're getting a new expansion team in Milwaukee sometime soon. You're going to get some other teams showing up the following year. You're going to need to like compete at this point. Like coming into the league and, you know, being kind of unprepared and doing well, that works for 1 year. But like you can bring the same roster into the next year with really no fixes, you'll be the Loudoun next year. You got to change. And it stinks. It really does stink. But like if you really care about the club the way you say you do, you got to understand, you got to metamorphosis, man. You got to change.
Let's look at your list of possible targets. Who do you think LaRue should bring in?
I have 7 names ranging from local players who are playing in the league, local players who are playing elsewhere, long shots. I know I made a joke on Twitter about Joseph Martinez, Atlanta United's forward, who's leaving at the end of the year. He would be a great get, but honestly, his valuation on transfer market's like $5 million. There's no way he's dropping down. $5 million, and he's also 28, 29. So he's like not like an older 37, 36, where it's like, okay, he might want to drop down a level. Joseph Martinez is either going to play in the MLS or he's going to a different country. Totally fair. But to start, go with a local kid who actually Detroit just saw, Dylan Borzak, or Borchek, as my very Polish partner like to correct me. Forward from Memphis, played at Oakland, played Flint City Bucks, very speedy kid. Full on pace. A player who, when he's running at you full speed, it's like, all right, like we need to start instead of, backpedaling, we need to just turn and run with him. Because if we don't, he's going to run right by you. You need players like that. I think he fits into the system well in the wing. Hopefully they don't put him at like a wing back if he were to come here, but like one of the front 3 fits in very well. I think he'd probably slot in behind the 2 forwards just to give, some type of space to allow them to attack. My next pick, I know for a fact there's at least one person who's going to hear this who's going to hate it. Dion, I know he's going to hate this, but another local kid, Russell Cicerone, forward for Pittsburgh, proven scorer. Guy just scores goals. I know he shifted to Pittsburgh, played for Bob Lilly. They moved him from the wing to the middle, and he just bangs in goals. He played for FC Buffalo, played for the Flint City Bucks as well from Bloomfield Hills. He just scores goals. He's a proven winger/forward who puts the ball in the net. 30 goals in his last 2.5 years. At this level, that's a good return. You want someone who can go up there and grab you 10 to 12, 13, 14 goals a season. You need someone like that to compete in this league. My next pick, someone who I've mentioned in the past, who I know a lot of Detroit fans might not like, but I know his contract is coming up at the end of the year. Dario Suarez, forward for Tulsa.
Ooh, I like this pick.
Star power. He might not have the goals as much, but star power. He's the guy who gets the ball at his feet, does a bunch of stuff. The crowd goes, ooh, people focus on him. He gives it to somebody else who then scores a goal. You need someone who's just a creative metronome in the middle, someone who's going to get the ball, say, look at these moves I'm doing, look at this, and now we have someone to focus on.
And it takes some pressure off of Hopino being, like other teams know, Hopino is kind of the key playmaker with assists. So that takes some pressure off of him and makes you think, well, there's a couple of guys who can make things happen like that.
Definitely. My next pick, if you've been following Detroit City for a while, you might recognize the name. Last time you saw him, he played for Stumptown in Nisa, but he currently moved from Stumptown to Chattanooga. Frankie Martinez. He broke his wrist earlier this year, but when the head coach for Stumptown moved to Chattanooga and took over, he's like, I'm bringing over 2 players to start, one I'm going to mention later, and Frankie Martinez, who is very young, but he was immediately given the captain's armband at Stumptown. Honestly, I'm surprised he's still at Nisa at this level. He's a very solid, tall midfielder who can play the ball from the back. If you pass it to him, he's not just going to hoof it up there and say, I don't know what to do with it. Truthfully, if he wanted to step up and play a bit of defensive midfielder, he could. But having him at the back is great. He's another proven captain who wouldn't take the armband from Stephen Carroll, but would be a voice back there who understands what to do. It means you're very cerebral. You want players like that. Honestly, I think with the way our defense is, he could push to start a few games. Maybe he doesn't unsettle the first 3, but like he steps in and he's like, I can help here. I can do this. We're not having to call in someone who is very ill-equipped to play our style of soccer. So it's very helpful. My next pick is also a local player who also played for Memphis. Did not play very much against Detroit, but if you've been following soccer in the state, you know him. Zach Carroll, defender from Memphis, from the Grand Blanc area. Very big body, very good rotation player. Would he start? No. But he's someone who, if you need to call in for the last 15 minutes of a game, last 20 minutes of a game, he can come in and give you that energy. If he needs to start for a game or two, sure. Big body, uses his head well to get the ball towards the net. Someone I think who'd be able to help. Problem is, he's playing for another Michigan State guy and Ben Pierman. Ben Pierman likes to hold on to his Spartans. I don't know if he's going to let him go. But
if Ben Pierman stays. That's the big question over there in Memphis and keeping their squad together. Randomly, I ran into that guy at the bar the next day after the game, and he noticed Engineer Randy's Michigan shirt and had Michigan pride, and right away I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But you're right. He's a big dude, and DCFC does not have any big dudes. Like, there are multiple times this season that I looked out there and I saw a big man on defense for the other squad kind of give DCFC some trouble. We kind of need that.
Like, I know Stephen Carroll is not a small man. Stephen Carroll is like 6'2", 6'3". Zach Carroll is 6'3", but he's like, and I mean this in like not a jingoistic way. Like, please, people understand. Stephen Carroll is like European 6'3", where it's like, this guy's like kind of tall and lean. Zach Carroll's American 6'3". Like, he should probably be lining up to be blocking Jared Goff's backside, most likely. He's a very stout guy. When he hits you going up for a ball, it hurts. So, like, you need some defenders who are like, I'm not going to get punked. There are plenty of times, a lot of free kicks, a lot of corner kicks where the ball's in the air and you see a DCFC defender go to jump and a taller, stronger defender just says, I'm going to jump over you and knock this ball in. That's happened too many times this year. You got to have some people in there who's like, I'm just not going to let you get up there and do that. I'm going to get in the way, whatever. My last two picks, kind of long shots. One I mentioned before, Milan Iloski, whose contract is running up with Orange County SC, the leading Golden Boot getter this year. Long shot because I'm certain if you're scoring 22 goals in very sunny California where you are born, playing with one of your brothers, you probably don't want to move to the Midwest where we have seasons, probably without your brother. But if it means signing his entire family tree to come over here, 22 goals is 22 goals.
His
man.
cousin's selling beers.
It's like, hey, your father played soccer in 1988. Can we roster him? Just because, man. We'll give you the number you want. Your kid wants to play? Yeah, sure. From the youth club to the whatever. He's on the bench too. Does not matter. Please come join us. But like, I understand playing in your hometown state, playing near where you grew up, playing with your siblings. It's fun. I've seen a lot of professional athletes who play with their siblings who are like, some of the best years I've had were playing with my siblings, playing with my brothers, because like I get to actually just fool around and have fun. Being a professional athlete, you don't really get that chance very often, but when you get it, you want to hold on to it. I know the Morris twins, Markeith and Marcus, they got to play together for part of their career in Phoenix, loved it, caused a lot of problems. People split them up. They both wanted to win a championship, but they both kind of seem to be very different people as a result. My final pick, personal favorite of mine, very much a long shot, but I think he's a very solid player. Long shot for a few reasons. Kevin Gonzalez, keeper for Chattanooga FC.
Really, a keeper?
Very, very good keeper. Honestly, in NISA, my top three keepers were Nate, Kevin Gonzalez, Tatenda Makruva. In that order, worst to best. I think Nate probably did a little bit more work to get better. But when they were in NISA, I thought Kevin Gonzalez and Tatenda, which I will never think he'll join Detroit ever. I don't think anyone will be happy with that. But Kevin Gonzalez, at the time, was a better keeper than Nate, in my opinion. I still think he's a very solid keeper. He's a long shot for two reasons. One, he kept Chattanooga in so many games this year. I don't see them letting him go unless someone throws a bunch of money at him. And number two, he's not going to want to come here to back up Nate. Nate's an undisputed number one keeper. Unless they bring in someone from MLS who's got a lot of years, who's been shown to be an all-star, won a championship or something, Nate's your guy. I don't think Kevin's going to want to come here. Got a bulldog mentality, nice guy. He gets in it, very vocal, but I don't think he's going to want to come here to back up Nate. But if he does come here and he happens to compete with Nate, lose out, it's good to have a backup, as I said earlier, who's played some really meaningful professional games, which as of right now, they don't.
Should we next year give Shello more minutes?
Yes, they really should.
Really? Okay.
They really
I think some
should.
fans might be surprised at that.
They really should, and it's not because I think Nate's doing anything wrong. It's like next man up. That's the whole motto for sports, next man up. Someone gets hurt, someone's on paternal duty, something of the sort, they're sick, next man up. It would make people feel a lot better, like the game against Colorado Springs. Shello, 2-1 victory. But he looked very shaky for most of that game. The defense had to try extra hard to make him, and this is not taking anything away from him, because being a professional athlete is very hard. I'm not going to come here and say he's...
And Colorado Springs isn't exactly a pushover opponent.
No, they are one of the most exciting offenses in the league. They lost MVP player, and they're heading to the conference finals anyways. They are still very good. He probably would look a lot less uncomfortable, and I think that fans would be a little bit more comfortable. Maybe the game against the Stars in the Open Cup, maybe Shello probably should have started that one. I'm not saying give him 20 starts, but maybe give him 5 throughout the season. Let's let Nate rest. Players get tired, and I know keepers do a bit less on the field than everyone else, in terms of moving around. I know the average soccer player, typically a midfielder, averages about 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 miles a game. Keepers don't do that. But they do get tired, and they do get injuries a little banged up a bit. You throw your body around a lot. maybe, for a game, we let the backup come in and he gets to do this one game against a bit of a softer opponent just to, whatever. But the problem with that is his depth. You don't have the depth in front of him to do that. So, like, you can't have a full roster rotation. You just got to go with what you have the best way you can. They didn't have it this year, so you got to go out and get the people. Yeah, that's my list of people. I think they'd all, maybe not immediate impacts at the beginning of the season, but I think they would all be surprises who would very much help push the team forward. I think some of them could probably start over people in positions currently, not all of them, but I think they'd all be welcome additions.
I'm sure we'll unpack a whole lot more. And if you've got any specific postseason questions, hit us up, dailydetroit@gmail.com. Now, this next segment, it's something we have to talk about. I don't want to talk about this, Fletcher. Frankly, it is a giant black eye on the state of Michigan and sports in the state of Michigan. What happened at the tunnel between Michigan and Michigan State, which now, as we are recording this, very well may result in assault charges to one of the players involved, or maybe multiple. Fletcher, first, let's set the table. What happened on Saturday?
Yeah, I don't like talking about fighting on this show because the last time I spoke about it was a Mouse at the Palace and people yelled at me about talking about it.
Please don't send an email. We're not talking about that right now. Thank you.
So I don't want to talk about it for that reason alone. But what happened was Michigan State got beaten on by University of Michigan. And after the game, there's only one tunnel. Teams got to walk back up that same tunnel. Typically, they try to hold one team back a bit so they don't walk together. But there really haven't been issues where teams have walked together. But this time, one lone Michigan player was circled by 6, 7, 8 Michigan State players, and they proceeded to beat on him. He fell. They started kicking, throwing helmets. It just got very, very not good. And then it happened a few more times, a few other Michigan players. Maybe I think 2 Michigan players were assaulted total by a total of 10, 11 Michigan State players total. Not good. I'm not trying to single it out to say one's worse than the other. It's very bad what happened. And I'm using numbers so people understand what happened. And it'd be bad enough if it just happened and that was it. But there are cameras, a lot of cameras, and there are multiple angles of it happening and you catching people's actual faces and understanding what's happening and not stopping or joining in, which is a huge problem because that's how people get seriously hurt. Seriously hurt.
In fact, I just got this news just now that Gemon Green's father says that his son is in concussion protocol now.
Yeah, I'm not surprised because they threw him down on his head without his helmet and proceeded to hit and kick him and swing helmets at him. I'm surprised that he's conscious, to be quite honest. I'm not saying that to pull a hyperbole. People know I'm not that type of person, but it's not good being jumped. If you've ever been jumped before, it's a very claustrophobic, awful feeling. And unlike, being at a concert and people stepping all over you, everyone's hitting and kicking only you. It's not like it's spread out. They're only hitting and kicking you. And your thing is either to fight back or protect yourself. And either one of those, you're still going to get hit and kicked. It's not like it's going to be I choose one and they stop. So for this to happen the way it happened, it's not great, especially after getting your hide tanned on national television. It's a very, very bad look for the Spartan organization.
I can't believe people just stood by.
I mean, I can, and not from the standpoint of it's okay, but everyone talks about what they think they would do if something happened, and it happens, and they're stunned. I'd rather someone stand by, on all honesty, than do what one of the Michigan State front office people did. I forgot his name. His name escapes me, but he was caught on camera jumping back in fear and trying to sprint away from what was happening before he got caught on camera, and then he promptly ducked down a hall. So I'd rather at least someone's present to be okay, what do I do? To then maybe figure out to do something versus seeing this and being I got to get out of here. That's not helping anyone. That's actually making things way worse because you as a front office person, you as someone who is not on the field, but you are someone who's an authority figure, you are running away from the scene and you're turning a blind eye to what just happened.
But under no circumstances should something like this happen. I get it. People might bump each other or whatever and crap talk each other and then they move on, right? That happens. But there should be no case where this happens. This is just disgusting.
I'm not saying that it should have happened. I agree with you. This is a terrible thing that happened. But if it's going to happen, you got to step in and stop it. You can't just say, oh, that's happening and leave. That's a terrible thing to let happen and then just walk out. And when you confronted about it, his response was to lock his Twitter page so people can't see what he's saying. So that lets him know oh, I screwed up. I screwed up something bad. it's a very not good look for the football team, unfortunately.
And Mel Tucker.
Yeah, obviously Mel Tucker was not abreast of what happened when he first went to go speak. If he was told PR-wise to then say, I don't know what happened.
Apparently there's video of him like knocking a door during the thing, hitting a door.
I did not know that. That's very not good for Mel Tucker. And it's even worse for the Spartans because they really can't do much about it because if they try to get rid of him, they've essentially sold him like a third of the university. So he's there. So he's got to clean that up. I saw a take on social media that bothered me a bit, and this was before it came out that the assault was being pressed by Gemon Green. Someone was like, those players are thugs. They should be kicked out of the university. And I was like, stop, relax. What they did was bad? Very much, yes. Should they be suspended at least for this season? Yes. Should maybe kicked off the football team? Sure, yes. Kicked out of the university? Relax. Like that makes nothing better. That does not fix anything. Kicking them out of university like this, unless an assault charge is filed, which gives them grounds to say, okay, you got to get out of here. So this assault charge being filed as we're recording this, if Michigan State says, you 6 or 7 got to go, you 6 or 7 got to go. Like that's really it. Doing irreparable damage to your own life because you wanted to feel good after getting nationally embarrassed. It's not a good thing. And it also hurts you going forward as a team and as a program because recruits see that. And if recruits see like you guys behaving like that after losing to your rival, they're like, I don't want to go there. I'll go to the rival instead. Because if the kid's trying to choose between Michigan and Michigan State and he sees State lose, he might be like, well, that stinks. If he sees them react like this, he's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go to Michigan or I'm going to go to Missouri or I'm going to go to wherever. They're not going to come there. So then you hurt your program going forward for one selfish act that doesn't even make you feel that much better because you beat someone up on camera and now we've all caught you. It's like, stick my hand in the cookie jar. I got a cookie, but now you're grounded for 2 months. So did you really win? Like, no, you didn't win. You got a moment of satisfaction for like a long time of pain coming forward.
What do you think needs to be done as far as corrective action to actually kind of move this forward?
Kids got to be suspended. They played their last game that Saturday. They played their last game of the season that Saturday. And if they were to go forward and say, got to kick you off the team, would I kick him off the team? I'd have to really think about it. But if they were to go forward and say that, sure, I understand entirely. You did something that like brought a bunch of shame on all of us and we're gleefully caught on camera doing so. So like we got to act. That's the level of like, all right, you got to sit. You're done. And I've lost plenty of games to rivals. I've beaten rivals, but I've never been like, all right, this game's over. Now we're going to fight. That's not how it's supposed to work. And I know people are like, sportsmanship. This goes beyond sportsmanship. It's like just being, and I'm not trying to demonize these kids, but it's like just being like a decent person. Like you lost. It sucks. They get to taunt you. Deal with it. If you don't want them to taunt you, should have beat them. That's really it. If you want to talk crap to someone after beating them, beat them. That's how I feel about, people talking trash about stuff. If you really want to say something, win.
Fletcher Sharpe, it's always good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, of course.
Yeah, it's been a long episode, but frankly, we had a lot to talk about. Now, I'll remind people, dailydetroit@gmail.com. Want to hear your feedback, your DCFC ideas, as well as any feedback on what we said about the University of Michigan and MSU. With that, I'm Jer Stays. Thank you so much for listening. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.